That is one thing that I think some Bitcoiners make a mistake on, and it's where they have Anarcho-Utopianism. There is not a world without a functioning government. It just does not exist. The fact that the public sector is supposed to ask nicely of the private sector for money when they want to do something on behalf of the collective is really how it's supposed to work, right? Because how can the beast grow if it doesn't have money?
Removing the money printer from federal government moves us back toward being the constitutional republic we were founded as.
Reading any particular libertarian book, I would say that the Bible is a liberty-based book. On the other hand, let's say we're paying our taxes in Bitcoin and we get to watch the money move through the system. That is something that's fascinating.
Government would not like that.
They don't have the money to do what their heart desires. And there's an authoritarian in all of us.
Of course, yeah. Have you ever wanted to start a business in the Bitcoin space? If so, then the Wolf Startup Accelerator could be for you. Wolf is the first startup accelerator dedicated exclusively to businesses developing in the Bitcoin Lightning Network. 4 times each year, Wolf brings teams from around the world to New York City to work with like-minded entrepreneurs, pushing the boundaries of what's possible with Bitcoin and Lightning. The program is designed to help early-stage companies achieve product-market fit, develop their brand, secure early-stage funding, and grow businesses that fuel the global adoption of Bitcoin. Go to wolfnyc.com to learn more or apply today. Again, that's Wolf, WOLFNYC.com. You ever seen the the film, I guess, Pumping Iron? Arnold?
Oh, yeah.
That's the one they trained at? The Mecca?
I know. Right when you walk in, there's a giant poster of Arnold.
Exactly.
Like posing at like a celebratory pose at Mr. Olympia.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when I was living in Santa Monica, that was half a mile from my condo, so I'd walk down there every day and work out.
That's cool.
That's a place that gets you motivated.
Yeah.
Everybody in there is a professional something, professional fitness, bodybuilder, whatever.
Yeah. As an endurance guy, I'll never be able to get as heavy as you guys.
Yeah.
But I can get fast.
What do you do for endurance sport?
So I was a Division I track guy.
Okay.
Yeah. And so now it's just the occasional 5K. And if I target the right one, meaning it doesn't have prize money, none of the elites show up.
Yeah.
I can still get on the podium from time to time.
Okay. Were you doing you said 5K?
Was that
what you were doing competitively too?
Well, I mean, back in the day.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Back in the day when I was in my prime, you could rip any 5K you wanted to. And unless there was somebody that was training up for trials or something like that, you were gonna win it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So how long does that take at a good pace? It's like a 12 or 15 minute thing?
It depends on the terrain.
Yeah.
Right? If you're on the track, it's always faster.
Yeah.
But these are all on the road, and there's hills around here. So, yeah, as an old guy, as a 40 plus, if you can break 18, you are pretty elite.
Yeah.
Pretty elite. So that's going to be, if you're breaking 18 in a 5K, that's like a 540 pace.
Jesus.
Or a 545.
Are you 40
there.
plus?
43, man.
You're 43. Wow. You look
Yeah.
You look great. I used to run 1 to 3 miles occasionally, but then when it started to hurt my shins, I just stopped because I didn't want to push that.
I don't do the miles either.
Yeah. I just do sprints now.
I'll lift, stretch, and race.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you do sprints then? But
No.
You'll still do
racing as in 5Ks.
You'll still run it.
I just not a lot of training. I just go out there and let the racing experience kick in.
And does that bother anything, like your knees or ankles or anything?
No. If I start ramping up the miles, that's
if you go beyond 5K.
Well, if I start stacking on multiple days a week, training a lot and stacking in the miles during the week, that's when all of the old injuries come back.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I actually don't know what you do for a living.
So I'll start at the beginning. I started out racking and stacking servers until I discovered that the sales guy, no joke, made 10 times as much money as I did that year. So that created a pivot to becoming a professional salesperson for highly technical products. Then I got into the startup scene, and then I got pushed more to the finance side of the house. And now I work as the sales guy for a big accounting firm. And as I started to become more interested in Bitcoin, I started networking. And one of the things that I discovered was that some of these growth stage companies were having to teach their professionals about Bitcoin. And they didn't understand the words coming out of their mouth. And it was frustrating to them. And so we started filling that void, and the rest was history. We've built quite a vertical where we are. Yeah.
So what is it, a big four? Which firm?
No, it is kind of like a big four for the middle market. Right? So it's about the 20th largest. And it's not a name you would recognize. Cherry Bekaert is the name. But if you are a middle market private equity, you're going to know who they are.
Got it. I worked for LBMC for a while. If you don't. Obviously here in Nashville.
I've got plenty of friends over at LBMC. They're highly specialized in healthcare. They're a lot smaller. But they do a couple of things that we actually don't do that are super specific to for-profit healthcare in Nashville.
So they're much smaller. Because they're like when I was there were like 1,000 people maybe.
No, it's a decent sized firm.
So you guys are more in like the 5,000. How big? How many people?
I don't know what our head count is, but we are materially larger than they are.
Got it. And so what types of products are you selling?
So when you're in this type of role, you don't have the pleasure of having, 1, 2, 3 products to sell. Everything is choose your own adventure. Everybody understands that there's kind of big buckets, right? Tax, audit. But then when you get into the advisory side of the house and things that roll up to the CFO, it really turns into a listening game. What can you figure out that this company needs to solve that that opens the door for you to even talk about something that's relevant? Because the number of things that have to happen from a timing perspective for somebody to need to make a change in that department is far too great to try and force anything.
For sure.
Yeah, you've got to find those open doors.
So you guys are in the business, well, at least on the advisory side of going in and making the CFO's life easier.
Bingo. Yeah. And that can be any number of things. We recently did some hand-holding for a small modular nuclear reactor company that wanted to go public, and took them through the entire process. Totally mission critical. Cannot screw this up. And there's no way your in-house finance department can handle that level of complexity and work. And we love coming in those situations. Yeah.
That's great. How did Bitcoin fit into the picture then?
It was a personal passion that really ended up overlapping with what I do professionally. Thank God. Yeah.
So is it, when you say in these advisory engagements, are these clients asking about Bitcoin, like trying to implement Bitcoin, or is this just something?
It's not often that just a traditional company ever asks about Bitcoin. If they did, we've got them taken care of. But really the way that we find these clients is just by being a available resource in the Bitcoin community for complex accounting issues. And really, the more ambitious a company is, the more likely they're going to need us to do something for them.
Right. Yeah. Well, especially the tax accounting stuff related to Bitcoin can be quite complicated.
It can actually be far more complicated for an individual than it can for a corporation.
Interesting. Why is that?
Because individuals, as they mature in their digital assets world, they go from being on an exchange, being on DeFi, being on an exchange that doesn't integrate with any accounting systems, getting into lots of different coins, trying robo traders. They lose money, then they find Bitcoin. When they find Bitcoin, it becomes a lot easier. But unwinding all of the NFTs, all the altcoins, all the DeFi, all the airdrop is impossible.
Yeah.
And we have clients that are generationally wealthy from digital assets that hire us to unwind that ball of yarn. And it is far more complex than a corporation. But at the end of the day, they don't know if they're out of compliance with the IRS, and if they want to short the dollar and start taking bank loans or buy a commercial building on leverage, their personal financial statement is an absolute wreck. So they get to a point where they can't even interact with traditional finance to take fiat leverage, which in certain cases is a really smart thing.
So you're saying what makes their personal financial statement a wreck? You're saying because of the crypto losses they incurred or something?
Just no clarity around any of all of this movement of wealth from one account to the next, and where did the money come from?
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. So let's say you actually were
funds.
successful
Right.
in DeFi, and then all of a sudden you see the light and you come over to Bitcoin. They're going to want to know where the money came from. And if you have no idea what the basis is, let's say you actually kind of never paid taxes on it, and now you need to go back and fix that. Yeah, you got to know what you're paying on. And if you can actually discover the basis, you don't have to claim a zero basis. In a worst case scenario, it's just zero basis for everything.
Is there I would imagine a lot of this, there's got to be a lot of materiality thresholds, obviously, first and foremost, right? If people are investing in 1,000 different coins, I assume they just kind of guesstimate on the ones that are immaterial and move on. And then for the ones that are more material, they're going into this discovery process. Like, is
the folks that we're working with, everything is material.
Okay.
Yeah, it's at a scale that is way outside the bounds of just somebody that was hobby playing with it. Yeah.
Got it. So these are individuals or businesses that became wealthy in bull runs, but probably largely through very complex series of transactions. And then you need to basically do the cleanup. And
it resembles more of a family office situation.
Okay.
Yeah. Typically, when we are working with individuals, it's because we're working with a corporation. Everything is so intertwined, the individual stuff's got to come with it. Or it's a super complex family office.
Got it.
And oftentimes more complex than your run-of-the-mill middle market corporation.
Got it.
Yeah.
And that's so cool. So what were you doing then? So you got into Bitcoin prior to doing this work inside of the firm.
That's right.
So was it your interest? I guess what was your journey into Bitcoin to start? And then was it your interest in Bitcoin that created this business segment inside of the firm, or
so it's multifactorial. On the personal orange pill journey, I'm one of those folks that had already started to become uncomfortable with the fiat system to the point where I was actively seeking alternatives, calling mentors, having them coach me through precious metals and other ways to store value that's outside of a traditional area. I had already started doing private placements and real estate and things like that, but you've got all of these public equities. What do you do with them? I was even considering just going to cash. I had gotten so uncomfortable. And so as somebody that's seeking and actively looking for a solution and educating themselves, once you start learning about Bitcoin and you're already there, it's fast. Yeah. When that orange pill hits, it is hard. Yeah. And so at that point, and I'm sure you've experienced this, where it just captures so much of your energy.
Yeah.
You cannot consume enough information. You're calling your friends at all hours of the night with epiphanies that you've just had about Bitcoin as you have another breakthrough moment of grasping some technical element or philosophical element. And it is just such a fun experience. Yeah. And so since it's capturing all of my time and energy, of course, I'm going to start meeting people that are running Bitcoin companies and running Bitcoin venture funds that have portfolio companies that have questions. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you become a resource. And that has been a really good situation for me.
That's fantastic.
And my team.
Yeah. Now, are you guys then, I would imagine another good pipeline for you would be the Bitcoin VC firms that are allocating a lot of these early stage Bitcoin deals that
it is
are also going to have, I would imagine, some complexity as they ramp up.
It's the very best pipeline.
Yeah.
And in fact, with anybody that's in my role, the venture and private equity investor is your number one referral source.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's your ultimate way to scale.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Are you like, what areas inside of the Bitcoin venture universe are you excited about? Like, are there particular solutions you see coming online that you think are especially going to catch on? Or like, well, how do you see that space growing?
I think you probably have to break it up into the different verticals that these companies are operating in. If it's a consumer product, is it something that makes it easy, or is it something that allows you to lever against your Bitcoin easily? If it is, a company like Strike that has a product that's not dependent upon the price of Bitcoin, which I think is fantastic, right? They're using the Bitcoin network to communicate custodial information across borders, which is fascinating as they continue to grow that company. If people think that the big payment processing companies are not going to figure out how to leverage the efficiencies that the Bitcoin network brings, I think they're living in a fool's paradise. I think every single one of these credit card companies is going to figure out how to reduce their operating costs, increase their security, and help people people that are Bitcoiners, or people that, I imagine they're probably going to work with every single altcoin out there as well. But to make that easy, because they've got this giant footprint of customers, they've got wraparound services, they've got hard costs that the free market forces are going to require that they reduce those costs. You look at TransferWise and Western Union that have been totally disrupted by Strike, right? Yeah. What are they going to do? Just take it sitting down and just die?
What are they doing? Like, have their revenues been impacted?
I don't know. I don't know if it's big enough yet.
Yeah.
Or perhaps it's something that resembles what happened to Music Row in Nashville in the 2000s when Napster hit.
Just vanishes.
They just totally just gets eaten alive.
Wow.
That could happen.
Yeah.
I don't think it will.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see that play out.
So with the credit card companies, though, they're making 2 to 3% on all these transactions, right? That is their primary revenue source.
Right, the interchange fees.
If they embrace the Strike model, which is using Bitcoin as a medium of foreign exchange, basically, right? Like, you're going from USD to BTC to whatever pounds and back.
Right.
I think is roughly how the Strike model works.
Right.
Doesn't that just annihilate their whole revenue base? Like, how do they embrace Bitcoin and maintain their revenues?
I think that the credit card companies probably have a number of revenue streams, and they've got an existing client base. There's probably a switching cost that is not immaterial. And as they start to reduce their operating costs, I'm sure those interchange fees will follow, and there will be some sort of competition that has a race to the bottom. But I think they'll figure out how to improve their margin, most definitely.
Got it. But using Bitcoin?
Potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a proven method to be able to communicate financial information that has really stringent custodial needs. Yeah.
Do you think, you mentioned you thought they would embrace and adopt a lot of shit coins as well. Do you see the technical debt that comes along with that as like becoming a drag on those businesses? And you've seen some businesses, right, that would say adopt Bitcoin and then they would add something else. And a lot of those businesses will do a 180 at some point and say they add Ethereum or whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
They'll then reverse it because the technical debt that comes along with that. Do you think that'll play a factor in Bitcoin adoption and or shitcoin adoption?
I think there's going to be a lot of technical debt if they try and do it themselves. But think about if Visa were to go into partnership with Coinbase or any other major exchange.
Yeah.
It would make perfect sense to take the existing infrastructure and combine that with a giant consumer footprint and a giant merchant footprint. Yeah.
Yeah, and then what would that be? They would release a Coinbase credit card?
I mean, I think the opportunities for monetization would be just a total choose your own adventure.
Yeah. Very cool. Have you ever wanted to live in an off-grid community with complete food, energy, and water independence? If so, then you need to check out the farm at Okefenokee. The farm is a pioneering community designed to foster longevity and well-being, eliminating elements that detract from these goals. At the farm, the convergence of nature, nutritious food, a supportive community, and the ethos of slowing down is unparalleled. Positioned at the gateway to the UNESCO World Heritage-nominated Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge, the farm at Okefenokee stands as a testament to a lifestyle that truly nurtures health and happiness. Unlike conventional housing developments where a token communal garden may suffice, the farm itself is the community. Small, intimate micro-villages seamlessly integrate into the fabric of a sprawling agricultural community. So if you're interested in joining this off-grid community, then go to okefarm.com today to learn more about becoming a member. Make sure to tell them that I sent you for a $21,000 discount on their custom cabin pricing. Again, go to okefarm.com to learn more about joining this revolutionary regenerative agriculture community. Forget multivitamins and other supplements. Animal organs are the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. You can get 100 times more nutrients from organs than you can from muscle meats. But the problem with eating organs is that they are difficult to find in stores, they are difficult to prepare, and even when they are prepared well, they often don't taste great. Thankfully, Heart and Soil Supplements has made consuming organ meats so much easier by providing powderized organs in capsule form. Organ meats include everything your body needs to thrive: vitamins, minerals, peptides, proteins, and growth factors. This is why organ meats were the most prized foods for our ancestors. Fortunately for us, Heart and Soil makes these treasured foods easily accessible. So go to heartandsoil.co today and use discount code BREEDLOVE to get started on your journey to optimal health and vitality. Again, that's heartandsoil.co, discount code BREEDLOVE. So when did you fall into the Bitcoin rabbit hole? When was this?
You know, like so many people, I wish it had been sooner.
Yeah.
And in fact, I was seeking alternatives much earlier than when I finally was orange pilled. But the answer there is not early enough.
Not early enough.
Not early enough.
Not specific on when, though.
No.
Okay. That's funny. And you're a Nashville native?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Born and raised.
Where'd you go to school?
High school or college?
College.
Ole Miss.
Ole Miss. Why'd you leave Tennessee?
You know, they because you're a UT grad, aren't you?
That's right. Yeah. Chattanooga, and then went to school in Knoxville.
Yeah. So my sister was at Ole Miss, so I had exposure there.
Yeah.
They were going to let me run track, so there was a fit there. They had a spot for me on the team, and they had a major that was new to business schools across the country, but not to many of them. That was appealing to me, and ended up being just the perfect marriage of IT, business, marketing, engineering, management, information systems.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Is
So
that,
it's a lot of accounting systems, actually.
that's what got you to racking and stacking servers?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then you figured out you got to go
I was working on the
sales.
support desk, and you get exposed. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And that just happened to be the job that was available when I graduated.
Did you find that was useful in gaining an understanding of Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think so, because there are, it's easier to understand how the systems work if you can build your own machine.
Yeah.
Not that you have to be able to build your own machine or your own node or set up a mining rig, but if you can, it forces you to just YOLO straight into that and then figure it out pretty quickly. Yeah, so it helped me understand the technical elements, most definitely.
Yeah. So was there much accounting in your degree as well?
There were accounting systems,
Yeah.
databases,
But you didn't learn
ERPs.
Did you have to go through debits and credits and all that stuff? Or
I did at an entry level, and I didn't enjoy it.
yeah, I felt like that was actually when Bitcoin was described to me. I forgot who wrote this, but as triple entry bookkeeping.
Mm-hmm.
I actually thought that my accounting education was useful through that aperture for understanding Bitcoin. Like, because you understood the importance of double entry bookkeeping.
Mm-hmm.
And then this wasn't actually in college, but I had separately it was a documentary about the importance of how double entry bookkeeping actually changed the world. Like, we didn't really have accounting before that. And well, if you don't have accounting, you don't have economic coordination at scale and, all the things that come along with it. So moving from no entry bookkeeping, I guess, or not, what did they even have before that? I guess single entry. I'm not even sure
I guess
what it was
they
called.
just had trust.
Yeah.
Handshakes.
Financial statements were not reconciling across entities. Let's say that.
Yeah.
Then they were with double entry bookkeeping, and then triple entry bookkeeping seemed to be like another step in that direction. So when Bitcoin was described to me as that, it made a lot of sense. And so I was curious if you thought your education played into that.
So I'll tell you, there was a lot of stuff that made sense. But the thing that really stuck out to me, that captured my energy and interest, was the separation of state and money. That was the thing that got me excited.
Gotcha.
Because at that point, you start to look at some of these big issues that are facing the United States and really the whole West and much of the world, with debt, entitlements, money printing, stealing, all of these bad things. And when you think about what could be on a sound money standard, the thing that gets me really exciting is the restoration of the private sector's most valuable control mechanism over the public sector. The fact that the public sector is supposed to ask nicely of the private sector for money when they want to do something on behalf of collective is really how it's supposed to work, right? Because how can the beast grow if it doesn't have money? If it has no money to do whatever it is that they want to do, it forces them to actually think about their decisions. And when you can run the money printer, you can scale any idea, bad ones, good ones poorly. You can start to consolidate power. I mean, you've got the federal government trying to do the job of a neighborhood association right now. Come on. That is just not going to work. You are so far away from whatever job that you're trying to do. There is no accountability. You can't effectively do the job. And a sound money standard forces the federal government to prioritize what they should actually be doing. And then all of these smaller things get pushed down to the state, municipality, neighborhood association, and then they can actually be effective with the money that they collect. And effective with the asking of the money.
No, that's an excellent point. I've described it a few different ways. One is obviously it's the profit and loss statement that makes a business be accountable to the preferences of their customers, right? Because your customers are telling you, right?
It's the signal.
You're doing good and serving me well, or you're not, right? You're deploying this capital profitably in a way that solves people's problems, or you're not. And if you can print money, then you obfuscate that signal. So then all of a sudden, if you're a business that can print money, you don't care what your customers think. That's what the federal government is, right? It's a business that can print money. So therefore, they don't care what their customers think. And that's why, surprise, surprise, people don't trust their government, don't like their government, et cetera, et cetera. Another way to say it is removing the money printer from federal government moves us back toward being the constitutional republic we were founded as, right?
That's right.
With strong local state sovereignty, as you said, really doing everything you can government-wise at the local level, centralizing only really national defense, right? Was like, what else were they doing? Pre-Fed, right?
I'm sure it has evolved over time, but I think at the end of the day, the further you are from the actual individuals, the more libertarian you have to be in your policy choices.
Right.
The closer you are, including in the family, right? I can be very specific with the decisions and the policies and the way we spend the money.
Yeah.
And
very communist, right? Like you'll just give stuff to your kids or even take stuff from them, right? But at the national level,
I don't like to use that word, but I think that the idea, the spirit of that is correct. Yeah.
That's Taleb writes about that in one of his books. He goes, when you're at the federal level, like if you're at the local level, you have some face-to-face interaction, presumably with your local governor.
Right.
But at the federal level, you're just a row on a spreadsheet. So it's like there is no empathy there.
Right. And then if you get an authoritarian that comes into a consolidated federal government, I mean, they're going to have a heyday.
Yeah.
And of course, their policy is always, you've got to break some eggs to make an omelet.
Yeah. Well,
right?
That sounds like...
Or, the ends justify the means.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that.
That sounds like a recipe for atrocities. So you are a libertarian at heart then?
I think that, my source code is libertarian. And the way that we operate is as a Republican.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so libertarian source code was installed pre-Bitcoin for you, or is this a post-Bitcoin development?
That's from my earliest memory.
Earliest memory. Okay. So who are the big inspirations for you in libertarianism?
Well, I think the big inspiration is actually my mom and my dad and the example that they set for me. And furthermore, her upbringing in South Mississippi and the way that they lived their life was the example that I watched. And it was personal responsibility, and it was fiscal responsibility, and it was all of these virtuous things that I got to see lived out in real life. And I think that's what writes your source code.
Yeah. That's great. So was she studying, I guess your mother and your father, were they studying libertarianism when they were younger? And then,
I don't know. I don't know that I ever saw them reading any particular libertarian book. I would say that the Bible is a liberty-based book, right? And I don't necessarily want to get hung up on the word libertarian because then you start to think about the Libertarian Party as a...
Yeah, it's been politicized.
Right, exactly. So
you could go with anarcho-capitalist if you're so inclined.
Man, I don't even want to go there. That is one thing that I think some Bitcoiners make a mistake on. It's where they have, Anarcho-Utopianism, where they think that they can isolate to their citadel and live out their lives. And I'm like, guys, the instant one other person shows up to that farm, you're divvying up public sector responsibilities immediately.
Right.
And voila, you got your government right there.
Yeah. Once you have to protect something, you have to figure it out. It does.
Yeah. There is not a world without a functioning government. It just does not exist. And so it makes sense to pay attention to what has worked. Yeah. What the Bible says. And have a system that allows us to thrive. Yeah.
And so what then, sorry to get hung up on the right word, but I'm trying to understand your views. Is it, what do they call this? Minarchist? Is it where you're like a minimal minimal but necessary central government, strong local government? Would this be?
I've never heard that phrase, but that seems to capture the spirit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
And then Bitcoin is the tool that gets us there.
I think so. Yeah.
How does that transition look?
I've had a few conversations about that over the last few days as people have come together. And I think just the fact that Bitcoin exists creates a blow-off valve that can store all the value that needs to be stored. And that exists today, thankfully. Because if something were to happen and people did need to move value quickly, we could do that, which is great. The price would go berserk, but it exists and it functions. Thank goodness. With regards to how the United States moves back to a system of sound money, and I think that's really the thing to focus on, because there's always the chance that the United States never touches Bitcoin. Maybe they decide as a federal government that they do not want to be the custodian. And I think that's a total reality, but they also could return to some sort of sound money standard. The fact that Bitcoin has the ability to meet the needs of a global economy today as it functions, I think that makes it the obvious tool. Yeah, gold's been tried. You can't transact real estate. Oil's not going to function like that. There's no other thing that exists that meets these needs. Yeah.
And so do you think this is playing... All right, so for instance, we're in Nashville for Bitcoin 2024. Trump is speaking Saturday at 2 p.m. I would guess we could describe him as a recent convert to Bitcoin. Obviously, this has something to do with was it $100 million campaign fund that was raised on his behalf by Bitcoiners? Correct me if I'm wrong about that.
I hadn't heard that number, but I am sure, I know for a fact that there are Bitcoiners that are raising money. And I think that's an important part to show Trump that this industry is serious. And these are real business people, and they are really raising money. And then you've got people like my mom and people like the BPI people and David Bailey and everybody else that is feeding Trump some sort of signal. And just like with any orange pilling, it's never just one person.
Sure.
Right. People play a different role in that decision support and that process. The fact that Trump is open to this is a really great signal. What is going on inside of Trump's head? Nobody knows.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know that it matters. We know what we know right now, and we're going to see what happens on Saturday. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be lit for sure. Well, to that point, none of us ever know what is going on in anyone else's head. We probably don't even know what's going on inside of our own head most of the time. But that's a good point too, with the orange pilling. It's like it's usually not just one person that orange pills. It's, you kind of triangulate truth amongst multiple people. But it's also not just the people sharing a narrative with you or sharing their perspectives or their bull case for Bitcoin. There's also the economic component where I think even if you understood Bitcoin philosophically, economically, technically, very deeply, and had deep conviction in it, if you bought it and it just continued to decline in price, that you might get shaken out of your conviction at some point, right? Like, so people's conviction, I would argue, gets hardened by purchasing power gains and softened by purchasing power losses. Do you think this is how Bitcoin eats the world? Is that it keeps, like, Bitcoin's serving the self-interest of someone like Trump right now, right?
Right.
Well, he has a bid to be reelected, and now there's Bitcoiners that are raising money to help him attain that aim. Is this how Bitcoin eats the world, that it just keeps solving people's individual self-interest, and then that case is reinforced as Bitcoin? Like, it's kind of a self-fulfilling thing, because then more people buy it, and then its purchasing power goes up, which then makes it work better for individuals.
I think you're hitting the nail on the head when you talk about it really is at the individual level. And the fact that Bitcoin is decentralized, I think creates a situation where people come to it it solves a problem for them, whatever it is, whatever reason it is that they're orange pilled so much that they're going to give away their USDs in exchange for Bitcoin, right? That takes all kinds. And I would think for somebody older, like any of these politicians, it's going to be a much slower journey. No doubt about it. Yeah. But you're going to chip away at it with every positive data point. Yeah. Volatility is scary, though.
Oh, yeah. You think that keeps people at bay? Well, yeah.
I think it keeps people questioning. I think that questioning their conviction, but I think ultimately it can serve as something that hardens their conviction. I mean, you talk to any Bitcoiner that's been through a couple of bear markets, right? I mean, that's a level of conviction that you know when you see it.
This September 5th through 9th, 2024, join me on the Pacific coast of Mexico for our first ever men's retreat, which we are calling The Art of Alpha. In a cooperative training environment at a world-class retreat center, we will be having daily meditations, movement practices, yoga, cold plunging, infrared sauna, lymphatic drainage, massage, heart rate variability training, gut health lectures, all while enjoying an anti-inflammatory diet, free of allergens and designed for optimal full body health. The retreat center is a gorgeous biohacker's paradise located right on the ocean. You can think of this place as a nervous system reset facility. At the Art of Alpha, we are seeking men who wish to cultivate freedom, wisdom, sovereignty, physical fitness, truth, and love in themselves and in those who look up to them. If you've always felt motivated to push yourself to new limits, to discover the best version of yourself, but you've struggled to find the right community to immerse yourself in, then the Art of Alpha is for you. You will be training alongside a group of men who have been individually selected for their outstanding self-discipline, virtue, and work ethic. To apply to join the first ever Art of Alpha event, go to breedloveevents.com. And yes, I did say you'll have to apply as we're striving to gather a select group of men for this experience. Again, that's breedloveevents.com to apply to join us for the Art of Alpha on the Pacific coast of Mexico, September 5th through 9th, 2024. I'd like to thank my friends at Swan Bitcoin for their long-standing support of the What is Money show. Swan's mission is to help millions of people get into Bitcoin, so they built the best solution to set up recurring Bitcoin buys and automatic withdrawals into cold storage. With the Swan app, it takes just 2 minutes to sign up and start buying Bitcoin. If you're a new customer, you get $10 in free Bitcoin for signing up, and the first $10,000 of Bitcoin you buy incurs 0 fees. If you're an existing Swan customer, then the next $10,000 of Bitcoin you buy now incurs 0 fees. So if you love to recommend Bitcoin to friends and family, then Swan is the best place to start. So go to swanbitcoin.com/breedlove to get started today. Again, that's swanbitcoin.com/breedlove. There's a sick, twisted thing in Bitcoin where if you've been around for a couple of cycles, you start to appreciate bear markets more than bull markets. There just seems to be more signal. I appreciate, it's a strong word. Obviously, you probably appreciate being richer in a bull market.
I get that.
But in the bear market, there seems to be less bullshit. There's more people working and building. And in the bull markets, the champagne's flowing and everyone's celebrating and there's stupid projects everywhere.
Completely. Yeah. You get a lot of froth.
Yes.
And I think the question that everybody asks is this real? Mm-hmm. Is this price real? Is there something that's bubbling it over? Mm-hmm. Is it going to go away tomorrow? Right.
Yeah. The froth. And then, I don't know if that's ever going to stop. I mean, it's a function of volatility. I guess if it would, the more.
But as market cap increases, volatility will slow down.
Yeah.
I was having a conversation with Dr. Laffer years ago.
Yeah.
And he was talking about different currencies, the success of their launches, and somebody else in the room brought up the volatility issue, really just by asking about the volatility. And he waved his hand across and he said, all currencies are volatile in their nascent stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just like, this is a given.
All assets. Anything with a small market capitalization, as you said, it's market cap is inverse to volatility, basically.
Yeah.
Is that Laffer of the Laffer curve?
Yeah.
So the higher the tax rate, the lower the tax revenues? Is that the Laffer curve?
Well, I think in his case, it is finding the sweet spot specifically and using data to do that. He lives in Nashville, actually.
Interesting.
Yeah, his office is not far from where we sit today.
So is he advising then Tennessee state government, or who is he?
I would imagine that they advise all kinds of governments.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I would bet that they advise Tennessee.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that they're going to be advising the Trump campaign and Trump administration.
Yeah. So all right, you said there's the possibility that the U.S. government might just move away completely from Bitcoin. But then on the other hand, we're saying that Bitcoin succeeds by serving the individual. In a world where the U.S. government completely moves away from Bitcoin, bans it, whatever, it sounds like a United States that's not serving the individual at all. Is this a different world than what we live in?
Really, the idea that I wanted to convey was that for the United States to move to a sound money standard, that I think that it's not a given that they will take custody of Bitcoin.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think that it's a requirement.
Yeah.
I mean, for all we know, they could use a proprietary blockchain digital asset to handle their accounting systems internally, and provide the transparency that we need. On the other hand, let's say we're paying our taxes in Bitcoin, and we get to watch the money move through the system. That is something that's fascinating, and you could do it today, right? You could have an accounting system that you flag your tax payment, and you get to watch it move into the sidewalk down the street.
And see how it's distributed. That would be crazy. Boy, that would be
the ultimate
government
public
would not
sector transparency.
Like that.
Well, when you move back to a sound money standard, voting, I think people would be more confident that their vote actually matters.
Right.
And if you're moving things back to the state and local governments, tax collection and public sector spending is much closer to the individual.
Right.
Not saying that California local government would want to do this as it is today.
Sure.
Maybe they will in 20 years. Maybe it flips. Who knows?
Yeah.
But you could absolutely have a city of the future that's perfectly transparent. And that would be super attractive to a lot of people.
That's the ideal, right? I mean, if it's a big if, right? And open to debate between anarcho-capitalists, libertarians, minarchists, whoever. If government is this kind of necessary evil, the ideal state would be one that is fully transparent. You could trace tax dollars from source to activity, project.
Absolutely.
And that's not something that was even imaginable really prior to, well, definitely not prior to the internet, probably not prior to Bitcoin. Do you buy into this idea that there's going to be a lot of upheaval in this transition? Because I mean, it sounds, well, we are moving from a centralizing government dynamic where we're printing money and the federal government's getting stronger and local government's getting weaker. Bitcoin inverts that entire process. So do you think there's going to be kind of a cataclysmic reversal, or is this a smooth transition? What do you subscribe to in terms of how Bitcoin plays out?
I think any guess would be wrong. Once again, the fact that Bitcoin exists does create a blow-off valve. And I think that's something that we know today and something that we can be super thankful for.
What does that mean when you say blow-off valve? What does that mean specifically?
It creates a place for people to store value that is not in a government institution. And people are going to need that if they're going to navigate any type of default or entitlement reform or debt reform. I think a worst case scenario would be for a mandibles situation, right? Where we just slough off the debt. People are really, really angry and perhaps going to be angry enough to attack us. Yeah.
So a place to keep your wealth or purchasing power that's immune to redistribution schemes that inevitably come in the wake of all these
That's right.
things,
Yeah.
default, et cetera.
As people try to break glass in case of emergency, and let's say you've got an authoritarian that's breaking that glass, they're going to be grabbing for all kinds of wild things that are not constitutional.
Yeah.
And fast forward 10 years, let's say you've got 20 people on the Supreme Court and it's just a bunch of super legislators and you've got a worst case situation. Yeah, it's going to be extremely helpful for us to create a situation for when that authoritarian goes to grasp, that there's nothing there to grasp.
Yeah.
The lifeline does not exist. And they just have to stop.
Yeah.
They don't have the money to do what their heart desires. And there's an authoritarian in all of us.
Of course, yeah. It's the ego writ large, right? Yeah. And that's such an interesting point, that because that authoritarian can act beyond the Constitution, as you said, right? They're not unconstitutional things they will be grabbing for.
They're going to try.
Right? And oftentimes, well, desperate times call for desperate measures. Oftentimes, these things do get approved and enacted, i.e. the pandemic we just went through, right? There was a lot of unconstitutional things happening for the past 4 years, I guess at this point. But Bitcoin's interesting because you can't, even if the authoritarian, obviously he would want to, but they're not able to actually, I guess, go beyond the constitution of Bitcoin, if you will, right? What's written inside of Bitcoin is what you can't circumvent it. Let's put it that way. Does that? I've said this a bunch of times. I just wonder what your thoughts are in terms of being American in spirit. How would you compare the U.S. Constitution to Bitcoin?
Oh, I absolutely think they're in harmony, 100%. Yeah. Especially if you think about the decentralization element and the Second Amendment. Those two things have a ton in common. So have you ever heard of the phrase or the idea of something called a ghost threat?
No.
A ghost threat. A threat that lives rent-free inside the head of an authoritarian, where they know that if they violate whatever rule that it is, something bad's going to happen. And that's what the Second Amendment is. It's a ghost threat.
Got it. So it's the
Bitcoin's the same thing. What are you going to do? Come get my Bitcoin? You can't. You're going to cut my head off? Throw me in jail? Yeah, you can't get it. And it creates a situation where the needs to fuel the authoritarian just isn't there. It gives people that are making wise decisions an opportunity to actually convey their idea and get it through.
Yeah. So starving the beast, obviously, of, well, money printing, frankly.
Stealing
through money printing, which at least forces the beast to raise money through explicit taxation, which people are then, it's more visible, it's more legible. People can see, right? Oh, I'm paying this tax bill, I'm writing this check, if you will, to Uncle Sam or whatever the government agency is for these activities, right? So the relationship becomes much more explicit, less surreptitious. So now there's more transparency, more visibility on the government agency. And then I guess the Second Amendment piece is like, there's a symmetry of power, right? If citizens have the right to bear arms, that's really meant so the government can't have an asymmetric physical power projection capability over citizens.
That's right. And the fact that those arms are so decentralized creates a situation where if the government did want to come and take them all up, the administrative burden of enforcing that law is just not feasible. And then you get back to the economics, the cost of enforcing that law. Okay, where are you going to get the money? If they've got unlimited money, yeah, maybe that does happen. Right? Maybe they can wage a 100-year war on the right to defend yourself. But if they don't have the money, they can't do it. They actually have to stop and think about what their priority is and make a wise decision, or you're out.
Yeah, then Bitcoin's attacking it at two sides, right? Because they would need to print money to wage that war on the right to defend yourself.
Right.
So if they did wage that war, well, then the value of Bitcoin would go up because they're printing the money and they're increasing, which increases demand for people to hold Bitcoin just by printing the money. But then you're also waging this war on the right to self-custody or the right to defend yourself, which is also going to increase demand for Bitcoin. So that's very fascinating. Yeah, and it really does come down to the symmetry or asymmetry of power dynamics, right? It's like that phrase "power to the people." This ideal is like, well, we want symmetry among, or equality in the eyes of the law, right? We want symmetry among people in the eyes of power, and Bitcoin is something that actually enables that ideal that we've talked about for many years and worked towards, but now Bitcoin is like a giant leap forward in that respect.
Now you see why it captured my interest.
Bitcoin, such a rabbit hole. Thanks, man. This has been fun.
It's been
Thank
a pleasure.
you for doing this.
Yeah.
We did this impromptu, so appreciate it.
Thank you.
Shall we get back to the conference?
Let's do it.
All right. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money, and be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.